Okay. When I ask UX people who practice user research what is their biggest challenge, I often hear how hard it is to engage stakeholders with research. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, so that's a pretty broad question.
Mm-hmm.
We have in some cases had great success in engaging stakeholders. And I have found once you get people talking, they love to talk. They love that someone wants to talk to them, that someone is listening to them, and they want to be heard. So once you get over that initial hurdle, I think people can really start talking. I think the initial hurdle is about making people understand the value to them.
Mm-hmm.
That for their time investment, they are going to get something back in a context that's meaningful to them.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you examples if you want specific examples.
Sure.
The first time that my team engaged in this, we went to the Jet Propulsion Lab to talk to the Mars Exploration Rover teams, and we offered up a set of services, one of which was ethnography. And no one had actually heard of ethnography. So, you do have to map what you are trying to do for somebody into a mental model that they understand.
Mm-hmm.
Be it starting with human factors, if people have some knowledge of that, some starting point that they understand. But we actually, once we explained that we're going to be watching, that it's not invasive, that we were quite successful with that. Then we had to ask for people's time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm contrasting the observing with, because observing is really low impact. You're in the room, but you're not asking for time. And then when we started asking for people's time, we did have to say more about what we were doing and the exact benefits. So they didn't want to hear, I don't believe, okay, we're going to go off and publish a paper. Even though we might have done that when we did, that wasn't value to them. We had to say specifically, here are some outcomes that could help you in your job, and illustrate that with previous outcomes that were meaningful.
What would you recommend to in-house UX researchers who are always trying to identify opportunities for effective research, if they want to better identify such opportunities?
Well, I mean, there's a couple ways I know to do that. One, you can look at how the organization functions and what you know, and see where you think there's an area where user research could be a benefit to somebody, and then you can contact those stakeholders. Or you can network internally and just try and be a part of as many things and connect to as many groups as possible, and I think opportunities will present themselves. I also think, when it comes to user experience, there are a lot of opinions, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think by going up and telling somebody, look, everybody has an opinion here. I'm going to give you data. I'm going to actually use an established practice that has proven itself in many different contexts, and you can illustrate it with examples. I think you can come up with a powerful argument there. And I am at one level, people are going to say, okay, this may help me do my job. And if you go up to a higher level, maybe with the people who are paying for it, they might say, okay, not only can we do our job better, but we can use data to help sort out what is often a melee of conflicting opinions.
Mm-hmm. So, UX researchers sometimes experience a tension between conducting research they were asked to do by their stakeholders versus research that they were not asked to do but think they should do. What are your thoughts on balancing this tension?
Very interesting question. I think what you are asked to do becomes a springboard for what you should do. And you usually start with a protocol, like you're doing now, right? You're following an interview protocol.
Mm-hmm.
In context, in the workplace, I think if you start with a protocol, other things will emerge. Mm-hmm. Other issues, other opportunities, things that you didn't think of. And I think what you were asked to do is a springboard to those other things.
Can you tell me a story about a difficult stakeholder who did not understand or respect UX research? You don't have to name names.
No, I think that where we have gotten into issues is people say, okay, I want help with this user thing, okay? And they don't necessarily differentiate between user research, user experience, design, HCI, any of those things. You know, it's you guys who think about users. And they will ask for help, but they don't necessarily have any idea what the process entails, how it works, or how they can use what you provide. You know, that can be a very frustrating thing, and I think you have to realize that you are, as you engage with people, you're learning from them, they are learning from you. You can get up and give all the PowerPoint presentations or keynote that you want. People aren't going to get it. They get it through experience. So,
what do you mean experience?
Well, I mean, so for example, I'll go back to this. Somebody comes and says, I want help with this user stuff. I want you to think about the users. I want you to think about making my system better. And then maybe the UX researchers will come back and say, okay, what do you mean better? Better for whom? Better for which user population? Better to accomplish what objectives? And they may not even know. I feel that there is a continuing, you know, for lack of a better word, battle to gain acceptance at various levels. I do feel like there's at least in our organization, I think there's a pretty widespread respect for the need to think about the users and the need to make software better. And I think we've gotten there with most people. I don't feel much resistance there. I think it's when we get into the specifics, not even the give me your time. I also think we've done pretty well there. It's more the, okay, here's the data, here are the results. Now go back and incorporate this into your software practice. Okay, I think that can be a very large hurdle. I think it can be a large hurdle even for people who are well-intended, because people who have only seen an engineering process without integrating in user thought, you know, user experience. You know, that's a learning curve. It's a learning curve for everybody.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's less about a lack of respect and more about a lack of understanding of what the process means to different stakeholders, you know, in terms of applying it so that you actually get the results that you want, as opposed to ending up with data in a report that sits on the shelf that doesn't give results, which can be, you know, that would be very unsatisfying.
So talking about reports, so many UX practitioners are always looking for creative deliverables that engage their stakeholders with research findings. What are some deliverables you found to be working well for you?
Well, so for us, you know, providing data in a way that the stakeholders understand it and can use it, has been key for UX research. And I'm differentiating that from creating user specifications or prototypes or the much more interactive part of software development. It's just the user research. Okay, what did we learn about the users? What did we learn about what your users want? And we've taken these methods in some interesting directions. You know, some of it is traditional software development. We did one study about sleep cycles and fatigue for previous Mars missions, because we were going in with Mars rovers. JPL was going to land these Mars rovers, and they did. They're still operating. And for the first several months of operations, JPL was going to operate on Mars time, which means you are shifting 40 minutes each day, right? Nobody really understood that in terms of a sleep cycle and what that meant for operations. There were, once again, melees of opinions from Viking, you know, from other related missions. And in that case, the loudest opinion, or the person who can put their case best, tends to win. We were asked to just gather and present data. We did. It was very effective, very well received, and surprising. You know, we found that some of the things that we thought were true did not seem to be broadly true once we talked to the Viking people, the Pathfinder people. It was fascinating. And so what I'm coming back to is presenting data in a form that's usable for stakeholders. And that will vary with the level of the stakeholders, right? So for us, somebody at a much higher level is going to want a different presentation than somebody who's down in the guts of the machinery.
Some research practitioners believe that they should only provide findings and never offer recommendations following UX studies. They let their teams figure out what needs to be done by themselves, believing that this way the teams are more committed to act upon research. What are your thoughts on this approach?
Very interesting question and very relevant to what we've been engaging in recently. We had some tremendous internal we had some internal discussion on this topic recently because we were going up in front of the team and I said only research results, no recommendations. Okay, exactly what you're saying. But in my view, that was a first step in involving sensitizing people to what we were doing. I think if we had come in for this particular group with both results and recommendations, we would have faced a very significant backlash. By just giving recommendations, I think that gave everybody a chance to get used to what we were doing and then take the next step, which in this case I think is going to be participatory design, where even though you may have ideas for recommendations, because everybody does, right? By involving the users in the design process, you create a sense of ownership. So in this case, we provide data and design facilitation that leads to recommendations and results, rather than coming in and saying, we think you should do this, which we feel would create a backlash.
How can UX practitioners tell if their stakeholders are bought into research?
Well, I think ultimately if funding speaks the loudest in that case. If the stakeholders are funding the research, they are bought into it at the funding level. And at the user level, if they are talking to you and engaging with you, they're bought in. And the first level engagement is people respond to queries and they will set up a time for interviews. And of course, the next level would be they're getting more proactive and reaching out to you and actually asking questions and making suggestions.
All right, that's all I have for you, unless you want to add anything else that around this topic.
No, the only thing that comes to mind is observing users. The importance of observing users in context it's been very interesting in NASA, and in some cases, from the International Space Station, if we want to observe mission controllers, we can go to mission control and observe that. For planning a Mars rover mission, and the mission hasn't launched, there is nothing to observe because there's not another team off here operating Mars rovers. And that's been a very interesting, and it's presented some interesting challenges. But overall, I think the results and the involvement we've had from users have been very satisfying.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. That was extremely interesting. Thanks, Jay.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.